I was 9 years old, a fact that felt both insignificant and monumental depending on the day. Most days I was just a kid, lost in the sprawling landscapes of my imagination, where superheroes soared and secret worlds awaited discovery. But sometimes, when my parents' voices grew sharp or their silences became too heavy, I felt the weight of something much older than my years. Our home, a grand, imposing structure that many admired, often felt like a stage where I was merely an extra, my lines unwritten, my presence barely acknowledged. Life with them was a carefully choreographed dance, and I was perpetually out of step. One crisp autumn Saturday, they decided we would go to the Hawthorne Mall. It wasn't a frequent occurrence, which made it feel special, almost like a treat. I remember the bright, artificial lights reflecting off polished floors, the cacophony of music blending with distant laughter, and the clatter of food court trays. My mom, elegant in a tailored coat, held my hand tightly as we navigated the crowds, while my dad, usually absorbed in his phone, actually pointed out a new electronics store. For a fleeting moment, I felt a warmth, a sense of belonging that was rare and cherished. I even managed to convince them to buy me a small, brightly colored toy car from a kiosk near the food court. We were near the entrance of a large department store, Macy's if I recall correctly, when my dad stopped. "We just need to pop in here for a moment, son," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Your mother needs to pick up something quickly. Why don't you wait here, right by this bench? We'll be just 5 minutes, 10 at most." My mom nodded, her expression unreadable as always. She squeezed my shoulder, a gesture that usually meant reassurance, but this time felt strangely hollow. I clutched my new toy car, already envisioning races across my bedroom floor. "Okay," I chirped, eager to be a good boy, to make things easy for them. I found a spot on the cold faux marble bench, watching the stream of shoppers flow past. 5 minutes turned into 10, then 15. My initial excitement began to fray, replaced by a dull anxiety. I watched every person who emerged from Macy's, straining to catch a glimpse of my parents. The vibrant energy of the mall slowly transformed into a dizzying blur of anonymous faces. My toy car, once a source of joy, now felt heavy and insignificant in my hand. I started to fidget, my small legs swinging back and forth, counting the seconds, then the minutes, then the terrifying, unyielding silence of the clock inside my head. 30 minutes bled into an hour. The laughter around me seemed louder, crueler. The bright lights started to feel oppressive, the crowds menacing. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw its way up my throat. They were gone. They weren't coming back. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing my breath. My parents, the two people who were supposed to be my protectors, my entire world, had simply left me. Here, alone. In a bustling mall, a 9-year-old boy utterly adrift. Tears welled, blurring the already overwhelming scene. I wanted to scream, to run, to vanish, but my feet felt rooted to the ground, heavy with a new kind of terror. The mall, once a place of fleeting wonder, had become a vast, indifferent ocean, and I was a tiny boat, rudderless, sinking fast. Every passing stranger seemed to look through me, not at me. The toy car slipped from my grasp, landing with a soft thud on the cold floor, a forgotten relic of a life that had, in an instant, ceased to exist. My gaze remained fixed on the small red car, a vibrant speck against the sterile floor. It wasn't just a toy, it was the last tangible link to the before, to a moment when I still believed in their return. Now, even that was out of my hand, a silent testament to my new reality. A choked sob escaped me, thin and reedy, lost in the cacophony. My chest ached with a pain far deeper than any scraped knee. This was a wound to my soul, a gaping hole where my trust used to be. I wanted to scoop up the car, but my limbs felt heavy, unresponsive, as if shock had turned my blood to lead. After what felt like an eternity, the instinct to survive, or perhaps just the primal urge to escape this crushing abandonment, kicked in. I pushed myself off the bench, my legs wobbly. My eyes darted frantically, trying to retrace our steps, to remember which direction Macy's was. Left? Right? Everything looked the same. A dizzying maze of storefronts and smiling mannequins that seemed to mock my terror. I started to walk, slowly, then picking up speed, my heart hammering. "Mom? Dad?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. No one heard. No one even seemed to notice the small boy with tear-streaked cheeks. The vibrant colors of displays blurred. The cheerful holiday music, once festive, now grated on my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. Every face was a stranger, every smile a sneer. The mall, a place of supposed joy, had transformed into a monstrous, indifferent entity, swallowing me whole. I pushed past people, bumping into legs, muttering apologies never heard. My throat was dry, eyes burned, and a gnawing emptiness in my stomach reminded me hours had passed since breakfast. Initial panic solidified into cold, hard dread. A certainty I was utterly, irrevocably alone. My feet ached, my small sneakers pounding against the polished floor. I must have walked for miles, circling aimlessly, desperately searching for a familiar face, a sign, anything. Nothing. Only the endless, indifferent flow of humanity. The warmth in my chest, a residual echo of my parents' presence, completely dissipated, replaced by a chilling void. My anger bubbled up, hot and bitter. How could they? How could they just leave me? The question echoed, unanswered, fueling a fresh wave of tears. I longed for my mother's hand, my father's steady presence, but they were phantoms now. I stumbled, almost falling, my breath catching in my throat. My vision swam. I needed help. But who? And how? The idea of approaching a stranger, of admitting I was lost and abandoned, filled me with a new kind of shame and fear. What if they didn't believe me? What if they were bad? My 9-year-old mind, reeling from the betrayal, began to conjure up dark possibilities. My eyes landed on a bright red sign in the distance. Customer service. A flicker of hope, fragile and desperate, ignited within me. Maybe they could help. Maybe they could call them. With renewed, albeit shaky determination, I turned towards the sign, my legs heavy, each step an act of sheer will against the encroaching despair. The red glow of customer service seemed to mock me, appearing closer with every desperate stride, yet never quite within reach. The journey felt endless, a cruel marathon through a labyrinth of glittering storefronts and indifferent faces. My chest ached with each breath, a dull, persistent pain that mirrored the emptiness inside me. My legs, heavy with exhaustion, protested with every step, but the fragile flicker of hope pushed me forward. Finally, I stood before the counter, a towering barrier of polished wood and glass. A woman with tired eyes and a forced smile was helping another customer, her voice a monotonous drone. I waited, clutching the strap of my now empty backpack, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Each second stretched into an eternity, the hope that had briefly flared now flickering precariously. What if she couldn't help? What if she just told me to go away? My mind raced, conjuring new, more terrifying scenarios. When it was finally my turn, she looked down at me, her smile tightening. "Can I help you, little guy?" she asked, her tone professional but weary. My throat was so dry, my voice barely a whisper. I'm lost," I managed, the words tasting like ash. "I can't find my mom and dad." The shame of admitting it burned hot on my cheeks, but the desperation was stronger, overriding the embarrassment. Her expression softened slightly, a flicker of concern replacing the weariness. "Oh, honey, what's your name? What are your parents' names?" I told her, my full name feeling strange and foreign in the vastness of the mall. "And their phone number?" she asked, her pen poised over a notepad. My stomach dropped. The number. I knew Mom's number, or I thought I did, but my mind was a blank. Panic seized me again, tighter this time. I don't know it," I stammered, fresh tears stinging my eyes. I don't remember." She sighed, a sound that felt like a nail in the coffin of my hope. "Okay, sweetie. Do you know where you last saw them? What they were wearing?" I mumbled something about the toy store, about Mom's red scarf, Dad's blue jacket. She picked up a phone, her fingers flying across the keypad. "I'll make an announcement," she said, her voice louder now, more official. "Parents of my name, please report to customer service. Parents of my name, please report to customer service." The words boomed through the mall's speakers, echoing strangely, embarrassingly around me. I shrank, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. Everyone would know. Everyone would stare. Minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. No one came. The woman tried a few generic numbers for lost children protocols, speaking in hushed tones I couldn't quite catch. Her brow furrowed deeper with each unanswered call. She looked at me again, her expression now a mixture of pity and something else, something colder. "Look, honey," she began, her voice softer. "We're going to keep trying, but it's getting late. If we can't reach them soon, we might have to call security, or even the police. They'll know what to do." My blood ran cold. The police? That sounded serious, dangerous. My 9-year-old mind conjured images from TV shows. Not of friendly officers, but of stern faces and cold, impersonal rooms. The mall, which had briefly offered a glimmer of safety, now felt like a trap, its bright lights suddenly too harsh, its cheerful music a mocking taunt. I was still alone, more alone than ever, and now the adults were talking about calling people. I didn't want the police. I wanted Mom and Dad. A fresh wave of fear, deeper and more profound than anything I'd felt before, washed over me. I wanted to run. But where? There was nowhere to go. The thought of the police was a cold, hard knot in my stomach, making me feel sick. I shook my head violently, tears blurring my vision. No, I don't want the police. I want Mom and Dad. My voice was a desperate, childish wail, cracking with the effort to hold back a sob that threatened to tear through me. The woman, whose name I still didn't know, looked at me with that same pitying, cold gaze. She didn't argue. She just picked up the phone again, her movements deliberate, like she was performing a ritual I didn't understand, but knew was bad. Yes, this is customer service, she said into the receiver, her voice dropping to a low, official murmur. We have a lost child here. No parents have reported to the desk. Name is... my name. She paused, listening, then continued. Yes, 9 years old. Says they were last seen near the toy store, wearing a red scarf, blue jacket. No contact information. Says they don't remember their parents' phone number. Each word was a fresh stab, exposing my vulnerability, my helplessness, to some unseen authority on the other end of the line. I felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit, a problem to be solved, not a child missing her parents. My ears strained to catch snippets of the conversation. I heard mall security, then standard procedure, and finally a word that sent shivers down my spine. Precinct. The precinct. That's where criminals went, right? My mind spiraled, imagining myself in a tiny, dark room, alone, with stern-faced officers asking questions I couldn't answer. The cheerful mall music, which had been a distant annoyance, now felt like a mocking soundtrack to my spiraling terror. The bright lights seemed to magnify my isolation, casting long, distorted shadows that danced around me like taunting figures. Minutes later, which felt like an eternity, a figure approached. He wasn't wearing a police uniform, but a dark blue one with a badge on his chest that read, Mall Security. He was a tall man, with a serious, unsmiling face and a walk that seemed too purposeful. He looked down at me, his eyes stern, and my breath hitched. This wasn't a friendly grown-up. This was an official grown-up, and he looked like he meant business. This the child? He asked the woman, his voice deep and gravelly. She nodded, pointing at me as if I were an exhibit. He knelt, but not in a comforting way. It felt more like he was getting to my level to interrogate me more effectively. Hey there, he said, but his tone lacked any warmth. What's your full name, sweetie? I mumbled it, barely audible. My throat was tight, dry. And your parents' names? He pressed, his gaze unwavering. Mom, Dad? I stammered, my eyes welling up again. I don't remember their last names. It was true. I knew their names, of course, but their last names? I'd never had to say them aloud before, not like this. They were just Mom and Dad. He sighed, a sound of impatience. Okay. Do you know where you live? Your address? My mind was a blank. My address? I knew how to get home, I knew the street, but the numbers? They were just numbers on a mailbox. I shook my head, tears finally escaping and tracing hot paths down my cheeks. This was worse than I could have imagined. I was failing. I was a bad kid. The security guard exchanged a look with the woman, a silent communication that spoke volumes of my failure. All right, he said, standing up. We'll need to take her to the security office. It's a bit more private there, and we can try to get some more information, maybe check the security footage. My heart hammered against my ribs. The security office? That sounded even worse than the customer service desk. It sounded like a place where bad things happened, where you got into trouble. He extended a hand, not to comfort me, but to direct me, to lead me away. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave the last place I'd seen my parents. But there was no choice. I was just a small child, and these were big, official adults, and they were in charge. Every step I took felt heavy, like I was walking into an unknown abyss, further and further away from Mom and Dad, further and further into a terrifying, solitary darkness. Every step echoed the emptiness in my stomach, the hollowness in my chest. The security guard, a towering figure of authority, led me down a narrow corridor I'd never noticed before, away from the bright, bustling main concourse. The sounds of the mall, the distant music, the chatter, the laughter, faded, replaced by the hushed hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic squeak of our shoes on the polished linoleum. My hand, small and clammy, was engulfed in his large, dry grip. I didn't pull away, too scared to resist, too numb to care. Each stride felt like a betrayal, taking me further from the last place I'd seen their faces, further from the hope of just turning around and finding them. The security office was a small, cramped room, smelling faintly of stale coffee and disinfectant. A bank of monitors flickered with black and white images of different parts of the mall, a silent, watchful eye over everything. My gaze darted to them, searching desperately for a familiar face, a flash of Mom's red scarf or Dad's distinctive walk, but it was all just a blur of strangers. The woman from customer service came in behind us, her expression softer now, perhaps seeing the raw fear on my face. She offered me a cup of water, which I took with trembling hands, clutching it like a lifeline. The guard sat me down on a hard plastic chair, pulling up another for himself. He tried again, his voice gentler this time, but the questions were the same, and the answers were still not there. My memory felt like a sieve, leaking every important detail. I just wanted Mom and Dad. I wanted to be held, to be told everything was okay. Tears started again, hot and heavy, blurring the flickering screens. I was truly alone. I was going to be here forever. A forgotten child in a room full of screens showing other people's lives. Then, a sudden buzz from a two-way radio on the guard's belt shattered the quiet. He picked it up, listening intently, his eyes widening slightly. "Repeat that, Central," he murmured, his gaze now fixed on one of the monitors, then on me. Description: red scarf, blue jacket, a little girl, brown hair, pigtails. Yes, that's her. My head shot up. Red scarf, blue jacket, that was Mom and Dad. Hope, a tiny fragile spark ignited in my chest, pushing back against the cold despair. He looked at me, a genuine smile finally breaking through his stern facade. "We might have found them, sweetie. Your parents just reported you missing at the main entrance. We've got them on camera. They're frantic." He stood up, his hand reaching out, this time not to direct but to reassure. "Come on, let's go get you back to them." My legs, which had felt like lead moments before, now practically flew as I scrambled off the chair. The walk back felt like an eternity and a sprint all at once. Every corner we turned, I expected to see them, my heart pounding with a mix of terror and exhilaration. And then, there they were. Standing by the main entrance, Mom's face streaked with tears, Dad pacing anxiously. The moment they saw me, a wave of relief washed over their faces. Mom let out a cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy, and ran towards me, scooping me up into her arms. I clung to her, burying my face in her shoulder, inhaling her familiar scent, the scent of safety and home. Dad wrapped us both in a tight hug, his voice thick with emotion as he whispered, "My little girl, my little girl." I cried then, not from fear, but from the overwhelming relief, the pure, potent joy of being found, of being held, of being safe in their arms again. The world, which had been a terrifying, solitary darkness, was bright and whole once more.